Hello, my fellow mods, and welcome to The Perspective. I'm your host, John O'Neill, and in association with DC Hillier and MCM Daily, we're here to bring you the first episode of Modernist Design Stories and Discoveries. As always, we're joined by my good friend and producer, Greg Gibaldi, and today, for our first episode, we welcome someone you all know very well, who has been our true guiding force and kind enough to join Greg and myself on this journey to build your favorite mid-century modern design podcast. We're proud to welcome you into this first conversation with DC Hillier. You might need to give us a little tour here. Any key pieces? I see two Coronas.
A Gunter Beltzig prototype florist chair, one of three made.
That's that red.
The red thing here. That's the most uncomfortable thing in the world to sit on if you're over 5'6", which was how tall Gunter Beltzig was. Right. He built it for his own frame. We have a Serge Mouille lamp in the background. Those black cats.
Cool.
Black shades, excuse me.
Yeah.
There's a sculpture back there. Forget the artist. Not a very well-known thing, but it's got the best name ever. It's Space Mushroom.
Cool.
There is a number 6 Macallan up there, courtesy of Dan.
Yeah.
In a black coffin.
There you go.
And then a Ditzel coffee table, solid couch, rack lamp from Amsterdam. I feel like I'm dancing.
Yeah.
I'm staring at my own frame. I'm doing it, but I need to see what's behind me. That's it for now. And on a 12-foot TV. That's the white thing.
I was gonna say we can white balance off of the projection back there.
Yeah.
That's cool. How else are you going to consume movies and film like you do?
Well, there was something interesting that was going around about. There was such a buildup. I'm not a big fan of Marvel or superhero movies. I like a couple of them. I like Doctor Strange. I think I might have been the only one. But about the new Wonder Woman movie, there was so much hype. It was one of the most expensive promotional budgets ever for a film. And it came out, and it was brought on, I think it was in theater, some limited theater, but it was mostly streamed. Yeah. And it was panned. Like, it was such almost like a diametric opposite of the original reception for the first film. And people were citing the story and whatnot. But there was a comedian in Britain, Jimmy Carr, who said that when we're home watching comedy, we don't generally laugh. A laughter is a shared experience. So if there was someone with us or other people with us, we're all in on that joke. And they're saying streaming movies is the same thing. People are way more critical when it's an intimate setting in their home, but they're also not getting that shared feedback from a theater crowd. So they're watching a film with a way more critical eye than they would in the theater.
I can see that.
So I think the Wonder Woman movie, frankly, the second one, this is nothing to do with design, but it's about perception and whatnot, is probably not as bad as everyone said. If it was shown in a theater, I think it would have gotten a far better reception.
Get a little bit more energy going in the
I think that's the thing about going to the theater.
I could see that.
And I remember, because I went to see, way back, literally in another millennium, the Blair Witch Project. It was
classic.
Now, we went on opening night. I was with a friend of mine. She and I went. We waited in line because we were one of those early adopters of the internet going viral. It was a viral campaign for that movie. And before social media, so you had to go to the website and join in a chat.
Right.
And what was great about that first night is that the crowd was so hyped. I mean, everyone cheered and was at the end of it. We thought it was the best horror film ever made. Yeah. In hindsight, perhaps not, but it's still really enjoyable. The second night, another friend was pissed off because I was supposed to go to the opening with him. So I went the second night.
Oh, you went twice? Yeah.
And it was, everybody was
the second
doing
friend that you went with the first friend, right?
Everybody was booing at the end of the second night. So it went from, it is a weird energy of a crowd.
Yeah.
I think in some ways you can apply that to design. What makes a design universal, timeless, classic? Why is, I'm going to use a really obvious example, why is an Eames Lounge such a classic chair? Why does it work wherever you put it? They knew in the 50s that this was a timeless chair in a weird way, because if you go through that sort of one of those, I forgot which museum of Michigan put out a book of Eames. They did a retrospective of the Eames work.
Cranbrook?
And early ads, like from 1956, 57, showed the Eames in a country house, in a Victorian parlor, the lounge. and it looked great. In every room they put it in, it was just a classic piece, and they sort of knew that. What's interesting, most people don't realize, of course, it was Eames' first, Charles Marie Eames' first upholstered chair, and that's how they were advertising it. Yeah, it was all plastic. It was all plastic before that. Yeah. And it was, the Eames' first upholstered chair was one of the ads went.
They did a pretty good job.
And in 1958, there's an ad as well showing other Eames products, mostly the shell chairs, the low tables. Yeah. And there was a warning at the beginning of the ad says, "Don't buy fakes." So even then, there were knockoffs being made just a year or two into the production of most of the pieces. So it's crazy. Knoll has a similar story. The Hardoi or butterfly chair, the leather butterfly, it's like a sling chair. In 1939, Kaufman was in Venezuela, and he was at a furniture fair, and that's where he saw this chair. Decided in 1950 to start producing it because it was such a simple form. It was immediately knocked off in the hundreds, and it was only the real one, which is so rare. It was only made for a year, and even though they were in production for about 30 years, 99% of them are fake. In the world. He pulled it off the market because he tried fighting the fakes, tried fighting the copies, but easy, cheap thing to make. Knoll was charging times as much for it, so
That is something I wanted to ask you about. Just your thought on balancing, in your home from an interior design perspective, right? Reproductions versus originals, and where you might be able to cut corners a little bit.
Nowhere.
Okay.
No.
I like it.
Obviously, there's the air of the snobbery when you say don't have fakes in your home.
Sure.
And there's a rule of a general rule. Obviously, there's no hard set rules in design, but there's a general rule in design. If you have $10,000 to do a room, that's a good budget. But you can get a couple of nice original pieces. But if you have $5,000 or half that budget, and get one good piece, because your room will one good original piece, and maybe just a couple of cheaper. It doesn't have to be anything nice, but try to avoid knockoffs. So rather than having a room filled with cheap stuff, you have a room that has that great wardrobe in it.
Right.
That people, that's what that room. Eventually, you'll get enough. For instance, a friend of mine went. He and his fiance at the time, they were in Denmark and they were traveling the countryside, and they went.
Cool. And
they met some people in a town. They were invited back to their home, and it was like a farmhouse. And in the farmhouse was an original egg chair, Arne Jacobsen egg chair. Wow. And the wife, or the woman, I should say, of the home, said that she had saved for years to be able to afford that piece. Yeah. And of course, it's Denmark. They have almost a reverence for good design. Right. And it shows. But they are so opposed as a people, generally speaking, to knockoffs. Better to save and get a good real one. What's neat about that too is, and I don't want to run on about it, but Herman Miller, or Knoll for that matter, Dan has an office chair, an original Knoll office chair, the life chair. And it's not mid-century, but it's a great chair, very well rated. He bought it used, but Knoll honors its 12-year guarantee, even if you sell it to somebody else. The arm was broken. Really? Two guys from Knoll, or representatives of Knoll, showed up here, replaced the arm, and walked out. Like, it was
no way.
Try getting IKEA to do that, for instance. It would never happen. And that's why I think you get an assurance of quality. It's not so much it's original, so therefore you have bragging rights to an original whatever chair. Yeah. It's one of those things where there's a Russian, I'm going to quote the entire planet today. There's a Russian expression that says, "I can't afford cheap things." Except it's in Russian.
Yeah, I could see that. I like that one.
And that's the idea, is that it's better to save your money if you have to, or there's an even more fun way of doing it. I don't think you have to pay a lot for originality. No. I don't think you necessarily have to, but should sometimes. You can go to any good antique store, or even online for that matter, and find good pieces, Norwegian pieces, for instance, which are usually like a quarter of the price of Danish design pieces. Yeah. You can find a dining table from, what's a good example? Borg Morgensen of Denmark, for instance. You can pay $500 for a table, a dining table that's already lasted 60 years. Probably going to last 60 more easily.
Yeah. When it's lasted the test of time, right? And that's why I think so many people from different household income level, let's say, or even interest in luxury goods one way or another can find a space here in this kind of community, right? Because you can go to the thrift store and pick up, I think I saw one posted recently, full Perspecta dining room set for $300, right? Full dining room set. I mean, it's still out there. I feel like over time, the amount of, key pieces out in the wild are going to keep dwindling as people scoop them up. But there's an entry point. If you wait, if you learn, right? Part of the mission here, if you know what you're looking for, you can go and browse, and hopefully you find something that becomes that statement piece. And if you do so with a low budget, even better.
Well, what's interesting, when I first started posting, I started my not the MCM Daily, but the previous MCM Modern group, Misinformation Modern group. The group's still there. I'm no longer. I still contribute. I no longer run it.
Yep.
I would post nice pieces like, here's a Pavel Tinel snowflake lamp. Yes, it's $60,000 on average.
Yeah.
They're rare. They're beautiful. I seem to be the only fan of them because whenever I post one, I like almost no likes. I just think it's a really beautiful thing. Yeah. Now, I would tell people the reason, and I would not just post expensive or rare items. I would post items that I thought were interesting, things that I like, even things that I wasn't really fond of, because I think other people might really enjoy this little quirky piece or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a woman, I said, look, wouldn't it be great if you saw that Pavel Tinel lamp in a thrift shop? Not really that likely. But it could happen with any piece that I've shown that was sort of a more expensive item. You can find it. I know somebody who found a chieftain chair in a Salvation Army. Wow. So now a woman sent me a message. She said, here's a photo. My neighbor is downsizing. She has this lamp in her hallway. Now, it wasn't the big snowflake. It was the smaller snowflake. Still worth about half, about 30,000, I think is the going price on those.
Wow.
And she said she offered to sell it to her. And she said, so what's a good price for it? And I jokingly shot back, well, anything less than 30,000 is a good price for it. Right. And she decided that it was unfair. Wow. She was a good person. She said the woman retired. It was unfair for her to offer $50 for this lamp. So she arranged to have it sent to auction, where it did go for about 30,000. So,
wow. Well, so, that was the noble move.
Well, the surgeonry lamp behind me, the black lamp.
Yeah.
At auction, it's been consistent for the last 12, 15 years. Consistently around $25,000 for that lamp. So Dan and I wandered off the street. We went to look at a shelving system that a woman had posted for sale online. And we go there, and I'm looking at the wall, and I'm going, that can't be a real one, right? You never see them in the wild like that.
Sure.
And we got a really fair price for it. I don't think she was looking to sell, but I had to have it. And what's one of those lamps that I've only ever seen online or in photos. I've never seen it in person. And I was always indifferent to it until I saw it in person.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I really love that lamp. I love it so much in person. It's like a car. You see a car in the ads and it looks, wow, that's a hot looking car. And you see it in person and it's a Cobra want car. It's like, a good case in point, the Land Rover Velar. The new ones, they look amazing in the photos. You see them in person, it's like, oh, it's an Evoque. Okay.
Right. Of course.
I was going to slip in cars somewhere. You knew I was going to slip.
No, I know. Yeah.
My second passions.
You had to. Yeah. Do you have a car right now?
We drive a Land Rover Discovery.
Cool.
Yeah. Orange. Because we want to be noticed.
Yeah, of course. Well, anybody nearby DC. And what we'll backtrack now a little bit.
Okay.
Where are you currently living generally?
Downtown Montreal.
Downtown Montreal. Okay, so anyone in downtown Montreal, if you're out there and you see
here's his address, go Robin.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's as far as we'll go. But that's a car that will certainly stick out. Very cool. I have an old a new 2012 Mini Cooper, and it's actually kind of close to my heart. When I was really young, and this is part of the reflection I've had over time, just being interested in retro products, let's say, because minis, I believe, came out in 56. We'll fact check that one. Yeah, 56.
So it was that year. It was available in beige.
Well, there you go. And DC, this is why I wanted to contact you and start a podcast together because that's an incredible
I tell
sign
you,
that you know that.
because the new one, the new minis.
Yeah.
I don't think it currently is, but a few years ago, they brought back that exact beige.
Really?
Like they went into the records, they got the color, and it is as ugly as you would think.
Yeah, right. Well,
Like it's such a cute car, and you put it in the most drab color.
These are the moves that we want.
Apologies to anyone driving a beige.
Yeah, right, Mini Cooper.
Right.
Mine's dark blue. Yeah, Greg's got a beige Mini Cooper though, so
Yeah.
just kidding.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's what we hope, or that's what I hope when brands are coming out with retro products.
Mm.
That's what I'm hoping they're doing, right? Is going back into the archives. They're looking for, to capture what was special about, those original products. And I think some will and some won't. The way I want to go right now is actually, with the most recent news on Nolan Herman Miller. Do we think that does anything, in terms of combining their forces? Certainly, unfortunately, I'm sure they're going to be layoffs in one way or shape or form.
Absolutely,
I hope all those folks that get really good jobs, right? But ultimately, do we think that helps them at all? Be genuine to the past?
I tell you who it doesn't help, and it doesn't help the consumer.
Sure.
Now, I tell you, it was interesting because just a couple of days ago, there was one of those retro, almost kitschy retro Facebook groups. Sure. And they'll post like photos of shopping department stores in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah.
And there was a husband and wife, obviously dressed up. It was a real photo. It wasn't staged. And everyone always comments, "Oh, people used to get dressed up to go out then." That's probably the most common comment.
Yeah.
And but they were looking at blenders, and there was a row of had to be at least a dozen different blenders.
Wow.
And by the looks of them, mostly different brands. So they had a choice. So if they got a Kenmore blender and it was a piece of crap, well, they'll go to get the Westinghouse one. And Kenmore goes, "Hey, we have to up our game because we're not." So with Herman Miller and Knoll, they sort of reached this sort of pact, if you will, that it was not necessarily an active pact, but it just so happened that Knoll always had a stronger office market. Herman Miller had a stronger home market.
Yep.
And so for Herman Miller to gain that office market, but it's good for them. But the problem with that is, first off, for Knoll, the last 14 months, there's been almost no office. So, I'm not sure how much that affected their bottom line, but it's definitely going to hurt.
I have to imagine that was part of the reason why, right?
And I think that's the problem with when you lose competition, you lose innovation. And that's the thing. Like, what's our edge in the market? And they said, well, we don't need anymore. We don't need an edge anymore. They have no choice. Right. Whatever we come up with, that's what they get. And if you want a quality American-made piece, now it turns out Herman Miller's actually, no, I don't know for sure, but they may have been outsourcing some of their construction. To the detriment of the piece.
I've read that.
Yeah. And that is something that so goes against what the company was founded on. I think they unionized, good wages, quality pieces. You got a problem with your piece, we will show up at your door and replace it. I don't know if that's going to continue.
Hope that continues. Also,
bottom line is the bigger the company gets, obviously the bottom line is important to every company, but the bigger it gets, the more important that bottom line seems to get, especially if it's publicly traded at all. I don't know. Didn't look it up, but I don't know if either Knoll or Herman Miller were publicly traded companies.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. We can look.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm going to look into it. I think there's always the corporatists, if you will, and I'm not saying that in a negative way, but they believe that it's simply synergy. It's market synergy. We needed that office market, and we need it, and we have $2 billion to spare, so let's have it. I do like the sort of ginger nature of how they're promoting it. It's not so much an acquisition or takeover; it's a merger, which it is outright.
Yeah, they started there, and then little by little it became Herman Miller's acquisition, right? Yeah,
again,
it's interesting.
It's what the market bears. It's what happens in the market, and I'm not opposed to a free market, clearly, but I just think that I hope there's a certain level of autonomy between the two entities, or at least for Knoll. because Knoll has always been innovative.
Yeah.
They're constantly working on and developing more or better ergonomics for their office chairs or anything like that. They're one of the first larger companies to manufacture stand-up desks, for instance, that work. So we'll see.
And they do continue to move out. I mean, I feel like little by little, I read about a designer, and Knoll isn't necessarily outwardly saying that they now own that designer's catalog, right? But they do.
Right.
Kagan is one of those examples, right? I didn't really know also that they owned Holly Hunt. So these, and again, I think that's the difference too. And tracks back to why I think this podcast could be really helpful, is that's an enthusiast level, right? Who doesn't necessarily know every nuance of the industry, but the more you uncover, it's like having little crumbs out there. Oh, look at this cool sofa. Oh, Kagan's owned by Knoll now at this point. That's
It's funny because there used to be a Kagan Dreyfus in New York, and it was such a very small company that often if you ordered a lounge chair, you'd have to wait 6 months to get it because they weren't a big company at all. Still going. They follow me on Instagram. So does Knoll, but Herman Miller doesn't. So I can badmouth Herman Miller.
There we go. Hey, Herman Miller, if you're listening, Herman himself, go follow DC.
Herman Miller himself.
Just like Ken Coffey, not a real person, everybody. Just so you know. It was two last names.
Curtis Gere.
Yes,
sculptor.
That's another one.
Actually, two people. It's a made up name for.
And so the second one was Jerry, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder now in terms of pronunciations, was it Jer? Like my mom's name is actually Jerry. Shout out, Mom. And I'm sure people refer to her as Jer. So I'm curious. We're gonna have to ask Curtis if that was the casual name for Jer instead of Jer. But I think they were probably going for a bit of a French.
I think they wanted sort of to give it a cachet, a little foreign sounding cachet, which was permissible in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I'll get one of those.
Isn't that like Haagen-Dazs? Like Haagen-Dazs is
New
like
Jersey?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Made up thing.
That is a made up. I think it's a Danish, or meant to be a Danish term.
I don't think it
sound Danish,
right? Like it's just
sound Danish, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, Greg. You're totally right.
But I can contribute my ice cream knowledge here.
Love it. Yeah. So going back to Kagan for a second, just to give a little origin story for me. My uncle worked at Kagan for a long time as they were coming back, and he was really an early influence for me to start to understand, what that furniture really could be art in many ways. And I think I certainly believe that it is. Maybe not so much the flat pack stuff that we're getting, but I have some of that as well, and you put it together, and to an extent, maybe that's a gateway for somebody appreciating furniture because they actually see how it's constructed. So won't totally badmouth IKEA, maybe quality wise, but
the quality has definitely declined. But think about IKEA. It's been around for a long time. It's been around since like 1943.
Long time.
And their first major stores were opening in the 50s in Europe. They used to have, right up into the 80s, I remember that they used to have, and you open their catalogs, and they would have features on the actual designers. So they would tell you who designed this piece, their expertise, where they trained or studied or even apprenticed. And then they would show the pieces that designer designed with a little sort of explanation of what's the thinking behind the piece and whatnot.
Sure.
And that was actually a big selling point, is that it made they thought knowing who the person behind the piece was a selling point, that it made it more intimate for you, that there's a person, there's hands that designed this, as opposed to a machine that probably made it. But they decided, they threw it all. They really, by the time you get to the 90s, it was, sure, the classics were always going to be there, but there was a steep decline in the quality. I remember it's been a long time since I've been in IKEA, but the last time I was there maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I do upholstery. One of the reasons I got into design is there's a story behind that. I was looking at the edge, and proper upholstery, not to get too technical, but the seam is on the inside usually. That's,
Sure.
it's how you actually give it strength. You double stitch the inside seam. And the seams on the sofa literally were outside. And there was no form, there was no tucking. Everything was, it had the air of cheapness. I think I even left the store. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Not to be a drama queen, but I am. But but here I only got into design, talking about knockoffs and whatnot. And when I was at art school, I was with someone. We couldn't afford much because, well, we were students. We don't have a lot of money. So, but he had a thing for 50s kitschy kind of stuff. I wasn't so much into the kitschy stuff, but I kind of liked the aesthetics of the mid-century, if you will.
Sure.
And problem is, you go to the junk stores and you find the pieces, they often reek or mildewed or whatever. So I decided to take it upon myself to learn upholstery and to learn furniture refinishing. So that's how I got into mid-century modern. It's how I also know that you can get some really, maybe it could be a little more difficult these days, but also how to get really good quality pieces. If you just learn a few skills. My ex still has so many of those pieces that I refinished and reupholstered. So I just think that furniture should not be, or design shouldn't be, a snobbery thing. Yeah. It so often is. And I see it all the time, too often actually, in the Instagram accounts that I follow. Now, they're not trying to be snobby. I don't really like the word snobby, but they're not trying to be aloof or elitist with their stuff. But I like the slice of it. I like, this is the cars they were driving. These were the movie stars they were watching. These are the TV shows. This was the couch they sat on when they watched those TV shows. Yep. I do tend to go towards more higher end design pieces, but sometimes it's just a little, it used to be that waste bucket, that rosewood waste bucket. Sure. You could get one of those for $100. It's expensive, but it's a waste bucket that you can't put anything wet in. So
what's functional about it?
And now they're $3,000, $4,000. For some reason, people went crazy for them. And they're not even, first off, it's rare for a Norwegian piece. And I'm not knocking a Norwegian piece. They have beautiful design from Norway. But the market seems to have a bit of a thumb. They thumb their nose out a little bit, preferring Danish design or even Swedish or Finnish design as far as the Scandinavian designers go. But Norwegian pieces, you'll find, are just as well made. And in most cases, I think just as easily as well designed. And that's a bit of a tip for those collecting. If you like the Scandinavian modern, look for the Norwegian pieces. You'll always save money on those, and they're great. So that's a tip for you.
Great Norway. Tip. I love it.
Your discount Scandinavian model.
Yeah, right.
Not all of it. Not all of it.
Right. Yeah. You still need a discerning eye. Do a little research, and
Well, that's what this podcast is for. Exactly. I was trying to explain the podcast to my partner, and it's very simple. You're walking in here with an interest, but maybe not with the knowledge. And I think that's the best place to start. Yep. Because obviously, because it's the beginning. People show up and listen and watch and learn something. But also, as I've said, I think it's nice to have the conversation about design. Why do we think it's important? We think it's so important that we're taking time out of our Sunday to fiddle with fussy electronics to make a podcast that we hope
poorly designed electronics.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I want people to understand design, not necessarily get to know design. And that sounds a little lofty and whatnot, perhaps a bit academic.
It's a bit of both. And I think the visual nature of what we want to put out. Yeah. And the ability to see a piece, right? And you can listen in audio form, you can look in visual form and YouTube and Facebook where we're going to post it. But the ability to connect a certain designer with that visual image and discover something, right? That's what really initially made me say, I think a podcast could work, right? And I think Greg, in our early conversations, really came along and said, you need to make it visual. Well, because at least have the option.
Yeah, I don't do this stuff. So when John was talking about a podcast, I was like, well, I want to see it. If we're just chatting, I think it's important for people to be able to see what we're talking about, or even the people who made it, flash a little thing on the screen and anything like that. So when John initially texted me or whatever, he was just asking me about a microphone. The microphone just broke today, actually. So bad recommendation on my part, I guess. But basically, he was like, "I'm going to do a podcast," and I was like, "Well, it has to be a video."
Yeah. And it'll be a good balance. And honestly, it's almost like if you reach a level in your expertise that you can listen to the podcast and not need the video, then you've achieved.
I think I recommended a channel.
Mod status. Yeah.
I think I recommended a channel to you. And they are crass New Yorkers, but they're intelligent and they have great banter.
Sure.
They don't want to. It's called The Basement Yard. So shout out to Joey Santagato.
Sure.
I'm trying to get him to follow me because he gets everyone.
Get him to follow you. We'll tag him, and we're gonna have him on.
The reason I like it because you will learn something, even if it's the most absurd detail. And the banter that they share it's silly most times, but it's genuine and it's heartfelt.
Yeah.
And I think that it's from just for them, it's just an affection for each other. Really, it's just that they've been friends forever and whatnot. I think for here, it's the commonality of interest, and it's not necessarily. It's not a lecture. You know what I mean? It's just basically, this is what we know. This is what our feelings are about these pieces. We can showcase a piece, I'm hoping, or pieces, or a particular designer, obviously. And I also would like to court a little controversy. There are always designers that people love or hate. Jean Royer, French designer, designed the most ludicrous, cartoonish furniture. And I'm not joking, like a pair of his ambassador chairs, they look like they came out of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. They're at least $500,000 if you want.
Wow.
It's one of the most expensive designers in the world. And people look at it and go, I can't believe somebody paid X thousands of dollars for this cartoon. But I kind of like them. I would never have one for obvious reasons. I don't have the money, but I just love the fact that especially in French designers. So when you consider Corbusier, Perrion, or Genere, there's sort of an austerity to French design. There's certainly an ethos or a theme, if you will, with what they're doing.
I've studied a little Aristotle. I got the ethos.
And Jean Royer went, no, I'm going to have some fun with it. I'm going to do things that my 12-year-old self would have loved. And so I'm hoping we can do a lot of that, a little bit of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
And all of those great French pronunciations you have there. I feel like I'd be remiss if we didn't mention sort of even our first conversation, DC. I said, how do you pronounce your last name?
Because I think I said Fudge.
Right.
Which is my mother's maiden name, by the way.
Right. But it is Hillier, correct?
It's Hillier. I always, if I'm at the store, I got a prescription refilled recently. It's a classic example. It's always Hillier. That's how they pronounce. So often they'll pronounce it that way here at the dentist, whatever. You know.
Right.
I'd say Starbucks, but I don't go to Starbucks. And if they do ask me my name, I say Mr. Hillier. I don't go to Starbucks.
You won't see him at a Starbucks, but I think the pronunciations that is almost a grade in itself, right? Once you start, and that's what I want to be able to provide, right? So we're going to do a series.
Designer pronunciation.
Absolutely.
It's a great list. Yeah.
So what we're going to do with that list and DC, I think you said that was one of your most consumed articles on MCM.
Oh, absolutely. Right? The Danish pronunciations, for instance, when you see his name, his first name is quite simple, Peter, you go Peter, but his last name is Hvidt. So how do you pronounce that guy's name? And I've been always, before I heard it pronounced correctly, I was calling it Hvidt. And I was thinking that I'd never heard that name before, but it doesn't sound right. I know it's not. It's actually pronounced Vilf. Peter Vilf. And I'm going, that's not how you spell Vilf.
Right. No, I didn't know that.
No, but it was that, and there's like Finuel. You don't pronounce the J. On Stegner, you pronounce it as a V, for instance. Those are clear. It's not Arne Jacobsen. I already made that mistake today. It's Arne Jacobsen.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Arne Jacobsen. Right?
Well, we won't.
And most people say Arne, but it's actually Arne. And the Danish names are more fun to pronounce. Full Clairtone, for instance, one of my favorite names. I would have to say one of the top 5 best Danish designers ever is Full Clairtone. I just like saying his name.
Yeah. So we're gonna put a series on to promote the podcast, right? And the intention, have little snackable videos so that you can go through and you could brush up on your pronunciations. Because what happened with me, and part of why I wanted to do this as well and have as many firsthand conversations as I could, was that I was consuming a lot of this information online, through Facebook groups, through Instagram, through Discovery, right? Certainly, a lot of your posts were, the stories that you were telling were, really, I'd say, impressing upon me that there was just so much out there, right? And but I realized the moment I found somebody else. Greg and I have a friend in common, Dan, and I would start to talk to Dan about designers, and I wouldn't know how to pronounce them. It's like the moment comes where you've done all this research and you've learned about something you're passionate about, and you're like, Milo Baugman. Did you see his new chair? Right.
A friend, a Facebook friend, I should say, who was a moderator in the Mid-Century Modern group, had applied for a job at Design Within Reach. Sure. And it's now his career. He's been working there for 10 years, no, maybe 8 years, doesn't matter. But Great. The day before he went in for his interview, I published the pronunciation list in the Facebook group. And he sent me an email about a week later saying that if you hadn't published that list, I don't think I would have got the job, because they were most impressed that I knew how to pronounce several names. Because he was at, who are your favorite designers? Because sure. A question you would ask someone trying to work at a design.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, he knew how to. And I think he may have chosen that. I can't confirm, but I think he chose the more obscure ones, the ones that are so far removed from what you'd think they'd be pronounced as. Now, I'm not sure saying he got the job because of that, but he seems to credit for at least helping him get a career. Yeah.
And look, it's a key piece of information, and just like you said, education. We want to make this accessible, in my opinion, certainly. And I think even, between you, Greg, and I, we really run the gamut, right? Of sort of Greg being new to this stuff, but really interested and passionate about design, certainly in music. And I'll plug Jazz from the 50s too, certainly. That theme song, Greg.
Oh, yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, I'm making a playlist as well.
Ooh, all right.
Oh, Greg, I really enjoyed the music you put on the sample.
Oh, thanks.
I was watching it going, how are they going to get clearance for that?
Yeah.
I cleared it, so we're good.
Yeah, we're good. I mean, Greg,
get that in writing. We could be sued later.
Greg comes to me. We're talking through this a little bit, and he says, "Do you mind if I, write a song for the theme song?" I was like, "Greg, are you kidding me? That's incredible. Please,
lyrics and
please do." Yeah, the lyrics
there's
are
a lot
all
of generic YouTube
names.
I didn't want to go that route because I felt like there's this sort of style to, obviously mid-century modern is about the 50s and 60s and that. And, I didn't want to just grab any old bossa nova tune. I wanted it to be sort of,
special.
Yeah, special. Exactly.
The album Bossa Jazz?
Sure.
It's like a black, that is one of the best bossa albums ever. I mean, I know it's a compilation. I'm sure there's plenty of. I just love that album so much. I used to work out to it back when I used to work out. It's just a good.
That's a great rhythm to be able to get into. Yeah, when you're jogging.
I used to work out to XTC, the British band.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Amazing band. Yeah, XTC fans tend to be a little far into the fandom thing.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, for sure.
As we sit here talking
about. There you go. I actually wanted to add, now that this is a good segue, I think, about the Clairtone stuff.
Oh. There's a Clairtone right there.
Oh, wow.
It's a Clairtone speaker anyway, right there.
Yep. I can see it.
I was curious about that. It's such a solid thing. How did you end up getting involved with that?
I'll go back to art school again for that one. The story, I'll try to keep it brief, but it was foundation year, first year of art school, where they try to expose you to everything art and design for students so that you can sort of decide what your interests are. And a lot of people, like myself, decided I don't really want to be a designer, because I went there to study industrial design. that I was much more in love with film. But anyway, or integrated media. The thing is, one of the assignments we were given in design history lecture was to research a piece, and of Canadian design. And she sort of had 3 items. One was I don't remember what one was. I always forget. One was an electric kettle, like a hot water kettle, and the other one was a G2 Clairtone. But there was a photocopy with no information. So go ask around, find out what this is. Nobody knew what it was. Finally, I was out having coffee with a friend of mine, our colleague, Hugh, and he said, "Oh my God, my grandparents have one of those." I said, "Well, what is it? I have to do a paper on it, and I don't know what it is."
Wow.
And he said, "Oh, it's a Clairtone something or another." And so I did the research, thought nothing of it, handed it in. She liked the paper, and I was literally driving out that night because it was an exciting Friday night for the life of an art student to get groceries. When you're going out that side of town, there was a bunch of junk stores, antique dealers, and literally in the window of one I used to go to was a Clairtone G2. So I went the next morning, and I think I know what it cost because it broke the bank, so I probably couldn't eat for a month. But it was $600, and I just because I fell in love with the stereo just doing the research. Forgot about it. Moved to Montreal, met Dan, found out he was an audio guy once. I said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Clairtone?" Right? They made funky stereos in the 60s.
Right.
We looked on eBay. Sure enough, there was one on eBay, G2. I never thought anything beyond that. And we went to one of the stores, antique stores, and they had a Project G in the store. And we got it, restored it. And again, that was it. But suddenly we just decided, well, at that point, it was like 2006.
We like these things.
They were just popping up. And we decided, oh, well, let's buy it. And next thing you know, Dan's parents' basement is full of Clairtone G2s and Gs. And it's like, what are we going to do with these? It's like, they're nice, but it wasn't filled. But we've gone through at least 30 at this point.
Wow. That's got to be the most, certainly, of
and most,
anybody
it feels
else.
like most of those have gone to LA. We just sold one, actually, which is going to LA next month.
Very cool.
But yeah, some property developer out west contacted us because we had built a website. Says, how much for one of your Clairtones? And weirdly, we had no intention or even thought about selling them. And it's like I say, it's not regular, but every once in a while somebody will contact you. There is a level of quality to them. Yeah. G2s, because they were made cheaper and because they were half the price of the G didn't sell very well. The sound quality is okay. Sure. Certainly it's fun to listen to. It's a very fun stereo to listen to. The first generation, which is the T4 Project G, it's not hi-fi. I mean, it's certainly but the sound, there's nothing like it. It's just, it fills a space so completely. And we found out in 2008, there was a Clairtone retrospective on the 50th anniversary of the founding of the company, where we met the co-founders, Peter Monk and David Gilmore.
Oh, wow.
And we were several of our stereos in the collection on display for the 6 months.
I bet.
And the co-founder of the company, because we were playing it on our own T4 Project G, which we got found in Winnipeg, we were supplying the sound for this space, which has got to be at least 6,000 square feet. It wasn't being piped through the speakers, right? It was literally just amazingly filling the space. And the founder of the company came up to me and he says, "Has this been doctored in any way?" Co-founder, and I says, "Is it being piped in, or is this I said, "This is not even restored. This is the original amp that you're listening to."
That's incredible.
So yeah, and that's our daily. We listen to that one. That's on the cover of the book. That one actually.
Is the acrylic restoration something that you've done? Do you have pieces made?
We have plastic polishes that will do minor abrasions. Okay. Acrylic is weird, especially older acrylic, because what can happen? People would sometimes use Windex or harsh cleaners on them. Yeah. That will cause hazing. So you'll get them, they're almost like a fog looking. We did devise a machine with a hot wire, which we learned how to build on YouTube, to fold our own lids. Like to get the sheet of acrylic pre-cut and then fold. And we must have gone through, how many did we go through? Many. We went through a lot.
And acrylic is expensive.
And acrylic is not cheap. And we went through so many.
Not quite loose.
And we got one. And it was like, it's not perfect, but
we got it down.
But it's not perfect, but it's imperceptibly good. The G2 has these little plastic like paired up hinges for the lid to the lever on.
Sure.
And they're often broken. So I decided, we got a GE2 once that had aluminum pins. We call them pins.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I could probably make a set. And I used to actually make them out of aluminum, carving and drilling and little tiny drills to make the hole and stuff. And it was actually really kind of weirdly zen to make those in. It's
absolutely.
like this, it's purely manual work. It's almost no thought.
I'm sure a casual follower of yours, right, probably looks at the quality and sort of the curation that you're doing when you're posting, not really envisioning that you have created hinges, have, refinished furniture yourself. I mean, those are all, very admirable in my perspective from just a DIY, process. You got to do it. You got to cut your teeth, right? One of the questions I actually did have for you in terms of refinishing and or collecting, was about mistakes. Have you made any big, let's call it, mistakes where you sold something and maybe it was a little too low, or you refinished something that shouldn't have been?
Actually, yeah. Tell us what you did wrong and that you want to keep secret.
That's the interesting.
That's kind of why I was asking.
Okay, Dan's got a story. We picked up a Caroselli chair. Designer we always thought was Japanese because his name really does sound Japanese.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not the case. They are easily $12,000, $14,000. They still make them and they cost that. Weirdly, the original is in good shape, about the same as a new one. There's no way you can make them automatically. Everything is hand done with these. And it's not everyone's favorite chair. It's probably a piece of design that people are sort of on the fence about or either hate or love.
Sure.
A dealer had a black one that was in really rough shape, but it was all there. It was intact. And the leather is so intricately, because it's a fiberglass shell, okay, with like forms and curves, as you would think, very large. And the leather has to be cut very precisely to be glued onto the foam that fits into that shell. And then it's literally riveted around the edge. And it creates a really industrial, but very still organically modern piece.
Sure.
It was actually introduced in 1963 and very forward thinking for the time. So Dan painstakingly drilled out all the rivets, of which had to be like 100, easily 100, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And took out the leather, cleaned off the dead foam off the back, cut every stitch so that all the panels would be there so we could take to an upholsterer, because it's more complicated than I could do. Sure. Take to an upholsterer, took all the chrome pieces out so they could be redone. The base has a chrome support, and you put the leather in a garbage bag, okay, right? And I looked in the garbage bag, said, should I take this out when I go? I look in the garbage. Oh, it's the leather pieces. Put the bag back down. Dan takes the garbage out. Remember, he put it in the bag. Takes the garbage out, takes the leather, poof, into the dumpster, and it's gone forever.
Well, that is exactly the type of story I was looking for. So.
Now, the thing is, it's disheartening, I'd say that. But if you look at, there's so many photos, any proper upholsterer could easily, maybe not easily, but they could easily, I said easily again, but they could do it. The chair is still there. It just, the leather is missing, so the templates are missing. We have thought about contacting the company to see if they would sell just the leather. Yeah. But we haven't done that yet. One of the many unfinished projects here. There are so many unfinished projects.
Yeah, they really add up. My my Eames Lounge did not. I got it used, secondhand. Got it for a pretty decent price, maybe about half the new price. Yeah. But it doesn't have any buttons. So this was one of pretty early on. Yeah, that's an easy one. Relatively easy, Yeah. But what I did, I forget who recommended this at the time, but I contacted Herman Miller to get samples of the black leather because they were just enough to use for a button, as opposed to sending them back in. Yeah, that was like a little hack that I. Again, still unfinished. But
and that's why they no longer send leather samples.
Potentially. That was the hack. So it's still on the list. But yeah, I got samples. They're sitting around somewhere from Herman Miller. I can match up the right black, mean, it's not gonna cover up the cat scratches, but that's a different mid-century. Yeah, I have a Maine Coon.
I showed Dan
he's
the
got
cat.
the mid-century look, but
it's been
he's got his
texturized.
claws. Yeah, exactly.
I think the only good tip I ever learned is a mean one. Actually, I know tons of good tips, but is if you're
sure you get a bunch.
working with a dealer, try buying at the end of the month. They got to make rent soon.
Sure.
I know it's mean. It's mean. Also, too, always establish a relationship with your local dealers, whether it's drugs or furniture.
It's true,
because they have people. If you have a piece you're looking for, you can almost avoid any of their markup by buying it from them before it even hits the floor. Sure. Most of them are good about it. Some they say they will, but you never hear from them.
Yeah. And then it's a network, right? And
very much a network.
I want to, certainly going back to the vision for the podcast a little bit, right? We want to have on some dealers. I want to have on, I think I said descendants in the trailer. And for the purposes of understanding what the life of some of these designers may have been like, certainly covering the projects that those folks might be working on at the moment as well. But what was Charles and Ray's favorite music or food or, kind of the simple stuff, the way they live their lives. That's kind of
what I know. They love Nina Simone.
Huh. Oh, who doesn't?
Why wouldn't you? Exactly. Why wouldn't you love Nina Simone?
Right.
My favorite walking music. Whenever I'm walking, I put on this giant playlist of like 50 Nina Simone songs at least. There's always something that syncs up with Nina Simone. I don't know what something you're seeing in the street or whatever, or you look at a building somehow. I think she's psychic in retrospect. It's like posthumously psychic.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite stories is we go back to designers, what their life was like.
Yeah.
Finn Newell, people could easily argue is the greatest Danish designer. Sure. Easily. His fluid designs are some of the most beautiful things. Like the N53 or N43 chair is easily one of the most beautiful chairs ever designed. Simple as that. He never wanted to go to art because in Denmark, you went to study architecture or you apprenticed before becoming a designer. Their early furniture designers were architects. He wanted to be an art historian. He spent all his time in the museums and wanted to be an art historian. And his father would have none of it. Father forced him to become an architect and therefore a designer, and left probably the greatest Danish design legacy in history. But also, I can't help but thinking, as a fan of art, that perhaps we lost one of the greatest art historians in history.
Potentially.
I think that is weird because even today, I can say today, but when I was at school in the 90s, at art school, the idea of becoming a designer was still like, why do you want to be a designer? Like, it doesn't seem like a real job. And the first thing I learned in one of the early design classes is that pick up any object. Somebody had to sketch that out. Someone had to design that. There is no object on the planet, man-made, that somebody didn't design.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, that is the universal aspect of design. We all live with it. I also learned ergonomics doesn't necessarily mean good.
Right.
There's bad ergonomics and good ergonomics. But ergonomics is simply the way we interact with an object.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's ergonomically designed. Yes, of course it is. All things are.
Yeah. I had a good friend after I had graduated college. I had a good friend that went to Pratt and went and saw their industrial design showcase for the year.
Yeah.
And I really considered at that point going back to school for industrial design. I have not put that on the list too.
At the school I went to is Canada's oldest art and design school, which was established in the 1870s. And I mean, even the country was less than 10 years old. The country's less than 10 years old. We need an art school. But at those days, it was literally just a finishing school for women, like to learn the delicate art of painting and whatnot. But then it was one of the first in the world to have an industrial design program. However, as a school that had only 1,400 students total, they only let 16 people out of the 400 foundation students into the industrial design program. So you had to work so hard to get in.
Yeah.
And everybody, I mean, I think 40 plus people applied. So 1 in 4 was getting in. and they wouldn't send you an email like they would these days. They did the old-fashioned way. Went to the industrial design department. On the corkboard outside the entrance to that area, there was a printed list of names.
Wow.
And sure enough, there's the name. It was on. That's my name. I got in, and I was so thrilled.
That's incredible.
And something weird kind of happened was I started in September. I started the program because we got in at the end of it's in May or April or May. And then September rolls around, thrilled to be in one of the best industrial design programs in the country. One of the elite of elite industrial designer who were going to be our teachers. It was a studio program, so you're doing all hands-on stuff. And I hated every moment of it. There was so much math.
Yeah, a lot of math.
And I remember to walk home, I would walk past there's like an old Victorian sort of Romanesque style building on the street. And I knew it was part of the college because I had done a bunch of foundation stuff there in that building. And I remember sitting on these double steps that went up to a landing. There was these solemn looking people smoking, dressed mostly in black. But I recognized one of them. So I went up and started talking to her, and she said, "What are you studying?" Because I knew her from foundation. And she said, "Oh, I'm studying film integrated media." I said, "That's so exciting. But tell me what you're studying, what you're doing, what your courses are." And I went home, and I remember I had a task to do that day. I had to clean out the storage room. And I remember finding a bunch of old sketches I'd done of chairs and cars and all the things that I liked.
Sure.
And I said, "What happened?" I used to love this thing, but the foundation year exposed me to so much design and art, but mostly the art and the expressive stuffs. And expressive stuff. And I literally the next day I was in integrated media. I remember thinking, she said, "You can't do any film or video courses because those are year-long courses. You're halfway through the school year essentially coming in." She said, "You have to do all the lectures." So I said, "Great, I'm in a studio-based and all I can do is seminars and lectures." But she said, "Look, you can still, if you get somebody to check out the equipment for you, like on the program." And I remember I made a film based on a story that a foundation student had told me about being one of the Vietnamese boat people in the 70s, where they were put into a concentration camp in Hong Kong. And I made them the artsiest 5-minute short documentary about that, which won so many awards.
Wow.
And I wasn't even in a film or video class. And I was like, I won a $5,000 scholarship at the end of the year. It won a couple of TV prizes, and it was shown on TV. And I got a special commendation type thing from the Toronto Vietnamese community. Right? So for telling their story so beautifully.
That's incredible. I mean,
and people ask me, "Why aren't you still doing it? Why aren't you still doing film and stuff?" It's just, I hate to say it, but if you want to be a filmmaker in Canada, you have to move to LA. Quebec is a bit of an exception. There's a very viable self-supported film industry here, and because it's French language. So if they want to see French language films, well, they'll go see their own mostly. But that being said, they're not settling. French language films, Quebec films are incredible. Most of them are just so well made.
Well, I think that is where I continue to learn more and begin to spot things, right? Ultimately in set design. I think, maybe there's a future for you doing that, right? Because I think that there are just so many pieces. I've seen a Curtis Jere. I've seen more recently, I forget which TV show that was in. I've seen a number of Jeanneret chairs. How do you pronounce that?
Jeanneret.
Yeah. I've seen a number. I mean, we know the Kardashians have them, and there's a bunch. But there are just so many pieces featured prominently in so many TV and film portrayals that I think hopefully what we do will help people have those synapses fire a little bit more and say, "Oh, I know what's around me." And then at some point, like we talked about earlier, maybe you'll be at the thrift store and just stumble upon one of those items.
I'll say one thing about the Kardashians though, and Kanye West. I am not a fan, but that's, and it's easy to dump on those people.
Sure.
For their absurdity, really, in a lot of cases. But they're getting paid to do what they do.
Yeah.
I will say one thing about Kanye West. He has an incredible collector's eye. I'm not joking. Kanye West knows the good stuff, and he knows it well.
Wow.
And it's not cheap. But even early Kanye West, like 2006 Kanye West,
Sure.
had like a Maurice Kulka presidential desk, for instance.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, those are rare, expensive, and why does he have it?
Right.
But then he went and did a new place in LA a few years ago, and it's nothing but Prouvé. Everything is Jean Prouvé. It's very minimal, the style that he went with. But I'm looking at the Prouvé pieces and going, those are the best of Jean Prouvé he has. And I can't think that of the places that he's designed or had designed, that he didn't have a hand in it somehow. So despite sort of the buffoonishness of him as a person sometimes, you got to give him credit. He knows the good stuff. But getting back to and
an invitation, Kanye. You heard it here.
I've got a few people. I've already been, as I've said, I've already got a few people lined up to do this with.
So why don't we? I'd like to formally call that repeating segment that we have nominations. So do you want to formally nominate somebody? Are we in a position to do that?
Not yet, because I would actually like to have a thumbs up. I do have somebody in mind for the first one, because he transitioned into design, and I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah,
but
give us some cliffhangers.
Think of the '90s comedy music duos. Flight of the Conchords, for instance, a very big one. Up here we had Corky and the Juice Pigs. I think they were three guys. And he was with, I don't remember the name of the duo, but he was a comedy duo. They did a TV show in Australia, several series of it.
Cool.
And next thing you know, he's doing Man About the House, which is a docu-series on Australian modern architecture.
Wow.
And turns out he was very, very good at it, like surprisingly good at it. But his way there was he had bought a great mid-century modern house in Melbourne, I think.
Sure.
And I don't know if he fixed it up or not, but he just fell in love with the place. I think he still lives there. But he wanted to show something that he thought was a sort of forgotten aspect of Australia, is that it has a great design legacy.
Yep.
And then he's curated museum shows since then. His most recent docu-series was Designing a Legacy, talking about the greatest examples of Australian architecture, but giving it a human face by talking and interviewing the people who live with this architecture, who live in these houses.
I had a question about the most prolific polymath, right? And definition being, a designer that might be interested in many different things.
There is one.
You got one. Okay.
No, yes.
We talked about Finn Newell, but
I think probably the greatest polymath. As you know, Italians do things differently in all regards, from car design to architecture, certainly in their design. Sure. And they always do it right. There's something uniquely beautiful about Italian design, and the country embraces it. The fashion industry of the world is in Italy because they embrace design.
Absolutely.
But they also embrace beautiful things. It's not necessarily a utilitarian aspect to it. It's often, they're elegant. So often. The best at doing that was Gio Ponti. Gio Ponti was probably the greatest polymath. He was a publisher, a teacher, an architect, a designer, a painter. Just did it. He was a producer. He was also, everybody gets the impression who gets into design, and they read about these sort of lofty texts about Gio Ponti and the things that he's done. And they seem to think of almost, because you look at his photo and you go, what a severe, stern-looking character. But he wasn't. He was actually incredibly warm and open, and also was so key in getting young designers into design. So he kept a very open studio. So that young people could go there to see firsthand design, to get interested in design, to go study design. Probably one of the greatest, not just polymaths, but influencers of Italian modern. Just Gio Ponti started it all. But he's a ceramicist, a metalsmith. He did. But that also, so Gio Ponti for sure. Just, you don't need to Google Gio Ponti to see everything, and a career that spanned almost 70 years. So,
well, I think that's a great metaphor for where we want to bring people, right? We want to have that openness. We want to make sure that we're coming in and giving people a ramp into, this design style. And yeah, let's leave it with Gio Ponti. DC, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
It's been fun, and we will catch up soon and schedule that next episode.